Well, today is front suspension test day. We're doing a bunch of tests on these two bikes, one of which just fell on the ground, to come to an ultimate review of a Canyon versus a YT. But today we're gonna look at the Fox versus the Ohlins front forks.
Nice.
Nice. Ooh. I've always wanted to know which of these two forks worked the best. I've got Fox 38s on my Canyon, but they're 160 millimeters in suspension. So this really gave me and Mike a chance to try the two forks side by side on the same part of the trail, one after the other. They're both set up for our weight and our riding style, so I think it'll be a pretty good comparison. They're both 38s. They both have 170 millimeters of suspension. So far, I really don't see a lot of difference. I really like the Ohlins, but I haven't really tested them back to back with 170 millimeters of suspension on the Fox 38. So that'll be a good choice. So we're at the top of the Big Chief Trail, and it's at about 8,000 feet. We drop down to almost 6,000 if we take this and the Sawtooth Trail system. So we'll find some good places to do some tests and take some video there and give you our impressions. The two forks really are the best that both companies have to offer. They have their best damping systems in them. The damping systems are a little different. Unlike the Fox and the RockShox, which are very similar, the damping system in the Ohlins has a third air chamber, so that's used sort of in that mid-stroke, as I understand it, of the suspension. And some people report a harsher feel. I don't necessarily feel that, but this test is really going to give me a chance to see if there's something there. They also have adjustments to the damping, and the Fox have adjustments to both the high and low speed compression and rebound. The Ohlins have adjustments to the high and low speed compression and one adjustment for the rebound. Now, one of the big differences between the forks is if you want to adjust the forks to have more progression, the Fox forks, you do that by adding volume spacers, and with the Ohlins forks, it's an air chamber, that third air chamber that you use, and that's got an infinite adjustment for that purpose. We have the Fox 38s mounted to a Canyon Spectralon, and we have the Ohlins M.2s mounted to a YT decoy, and it's the Core 4 that has the Ohlins. We found 3 areas of trails that we thought would demonstrate to us the difference between these forks. One was sort of a rolly section, another one was rocky, bumpy, and had a turn in it, and then the third one was just all out rock. Okay, this section is kind of rolling, and so we'll see how those shocks act. Kind of slow moving stuff, but it's deep into the suspension. Now we have the Ohlins coming down the same section. Was there any difference at all?
I think this one maybe was a little stiffer.
Stiffer?
The suspension setting.
Okay, so it could just be the settings on the suspension.
But it's also a hard... I don't know if it's the best section to really look for everything we're looking for.
Yeah. Okay, we'll hit something rockier. Well, what I notice on a section like that is you have a couple different ways of riding it. You could just let it soak up, or you could kind of hop from one jump to the other, or one bump from the other. And having your suspension set up or act differently is important for each of those. Now this is that section of trail that has the turn in it with some bumps. That felt good. I really like the control. Stayed planted. It didn't jerk me, you know, it wasn't harsh. It was solid but not harsh. Okay, now try the Fox. Yeah, that felt really good too. I don't notice a difference. Both good forks. If anything, maybe a little harsher on the successive bumps, but that's probably the damping. So I don't see much difference. Now in this third section, which is all rocky, we filmed and tested the forks going up and down the trail. On an e-bike, you're doing a lot of riding up trail and sometimes aggressively, so it's good to know how the forks act going up, and you tend to be back on the bike more, so it is a different action for the forks. And in this case, I took some slow-mo of the forks coming up the trail so you could see for yourself how those forks are reacting to the bumps. So Mike and I discussed this after the ride and discussed our final analysis. And it may not be satisfying for everybody, maybe it is, but our impression, and we're pretty aggressive riders and pretty picky about our suspension, is they both are really good forks. And probably the biggest difference that you can tell between these two forks is what you do to the damping adjustments. If those were adjusted the same for both forks, and that you would probably have to do that in a lab because it's all so subjective and depends on how you're riding that moment, then they probably would act the same. You do have a little bit of different functionality between the two forks with the air chambers, as I mentioned earlier. I tend to think the Ohlins ride a little bit more lively, and they tend to wear my arms out a little less, but that's very subjective. I did notice when we did this test and we were going back and forth between the bikes, my hands started to wear out a little bit more with the Fox forks. Now, again, it's probably because we have the damping settings adjusted differently. There's also one difference that I didn't mention earlier in this video, and that is that the Fox fork is mounted to a 27-inch wheel. Now, it shouldn't make a huge difference, but if you're going along a rocky section and doing a rocky trail for an hour or so, which we were doing, that 27-inch wheel, 27.5-inch wheel is going to get down into the holes a little bit more than that 29. And so it's going to take a little bit more work for that fork to keep the trail smooth. And that may have been what I was feeling. Otherwise, I would say if you've got a Fox, don't switch to the Olin. If you've got an Olin, don't switch to the Fox. They're both great forks. If you're looking at a bike that has one or the other, probably put your attention on something else as being important, because if you've got one of these forks, you've probably got one of the best.